Hey, Big Blue Banter listener. Would you like an extra $500? That's a lot of cash. Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and, in turn, help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. BlueWirePods.com/survey. The link is also in the show notes of this episode.
Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. And a little disappointed right now, Nick, because I entered a raffle the other day, a big raffle, where I looked in the thing because you could see the little cup of tickets and how many each person put in. I know I put in about 40 to 50% of the tickets in that raffle. It was for a signed Dexter Lawrence framed photo, a replica Giants helmet signed by Lawrence, and then like 16 other Giants things that you could get from this grab bag. And like I was going to put it all back here. I was super excited for it. And I lost. And I put in 40, 50% of the tickets, a lot of money into this thing. Not happy about that. But I have to roll forward and I have to move forward, just like we have to move forward as Giants fans. And that's the connection here. But today we're doing my favorite thing to do during a lost season like this. That's the mailbag. The reason I love the mailbags is you get to talk 30,000-foot view questions. You get to hear from the listeners who are watching and consuming our product. And we get to make the listeners part of the show. So these are always my favorite to do. So without further ado, we got a lot of questions. We're going to see what we can get to. Before we do that, I'll do a quick Nick, how you doing intro?
I'm doing excellent. Let's get to some questions, Dan.
Okay, KSIXI, great Twitter follow, by the way, asks, Brian Daboll seems to be able to make pretty strong game plans, and his ability to maximize the quarterback's effectiveness is great. But how do you reconcile the macro decisions, such as fourth down decisions, his temper, the kicker situation, playing Adoree at punt returner, things like that, and evaluating him for hot seat heading into 2025?
I personally don't reconcile that. I hold it against him. I think it just adds to the heat that seat is generating day in and day out. And we've defended Daboll for certain decisions in the past, and we've also jumped at him and chewed his ass out on this podcast. A lot of the decisions that he just mentioned right here, and to me, I don't think I'm reconciling it at this point. This is a week-to-week, game-by-game type of evaluation, and if this thing implodes, a la 2020 with Joe Judge, 2021, whatever it was, 2021 with Joe Judge, then he might be out of a job at the end of this season. And I think a lot of those decisions that you brought up are decisions that would lead to that final decision.
Yeah, I think I agree with Nick wholeheartedly on this. I do respect his ability to design a game plan. I do respect some of what we see on tape, which is really fun stuff. And I respect the fact that he's gotten a lot out of quarterbacks like Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, and Tyrod Taylor. These are not all world-beating quarterbacks, and he's generated a lot of production out of them for what they are, in my opinion, of what they are as quarterbacks. But at the same time, I can't just lean on everything he does offensively as the be-all, end-all when guys like Ben Johnson will be available this offseason, and you could just bring him in for a fresh new start, and maybe he is the type of guy who will do better on these fourth down decisions, may not have a temper, all the things that you mentioned. So to me, it just kind of depends what direction they go. I don't want a Dan Quinn, no offense. I always bring him up. I know he's 3-1, and I hate to do it to him, but I don't want a defensive-minded coach moving forward. I need an offensive coach because I've seen the bad years where we have guys who don't know how to scheme offense, a.k.a. you bring in Joe Judge. He doesn't know how to run an offense, so he brings in Jason Garrett. I don't want to go back to that. It could be so much worse offensively than it is right now. I really do believe that without Daboll. Because remember, we've had guys like Beckham in here and we're not scheming stuff up. So it's not like you just automatically have neighbors and you could scheme offense. So I keep that in mind. But again, all those things are important. Let's get to this next question from Jim Henry, who asks, I got a mailbag question for you guys whenever you do one. And I know this is a bit of an overreaction, but it's been so long since the offensive line was competent. When do you consider giving Jermaine Illuminor an extension? I know he's in the first year of a 2-year deal, so probably not till the offseason. But if he plays like this, he's got to be locked up long term.
Consider it yesterday, but actually offer it. I think you wait probably till the end of the season. You have him under contract for another year and you see how he progresses as time goes by, as there's more tape on him with this specific offensive line unit, even though he has experience with Carmen Brasillo. But I'm completely open to bringing him back. He's only 29 years old, and the right tackle position right now, it's night and day what it was with Evan Neal. And that's depressing and that sucks because Evan Neal seems like a burned asset at this point. Hopefully the Giants can salvage that somehow. But yeah, I definitely want to entertain bringing back Jermaine Illuminor on an extension.
I'm a Nick on this one. Offensive linemen play older into their careers, so you can reason that you can still get 4, maybe 5 good years out of Illuminor if you re-sign him to an extension. We just can't even take for granted what it's like to have this kind of competent right tackle play. I know we're 1-3, so it's harder to really factor in and focus on some of the really good things and developments that have happened this season. But that's certainly one of their best developments, the right tackle position honestly, the both tackle positions for the first time in decade plus being competent in pass protection, and not competent, being very good. When you consider how dominant Thomas is in pass protection and how pretty damn good Illuminor has been, that's as good, almost like they're probably top 10 in just pure offensive tackle pass production this year if we looked across the league. All right, Pope John Pitball says, this one's for Nicky Bravado.
Oh,
how's it being back in the tri-state area after your Arizona stint? Good question.
Not as much Mexican food up here, which is unfortunate, man. I've been trying to find some elotes, some esquites. I'm trying to find all this kind of stuff, and I can't really find it. So anybody want to slide in my DMs, let me know where there's good Mexican food up in the Westchester or Queens area. Please let me know. But I love being back here, man. My family, my friends are up here, so I have more of a social life up here rather than just playing hockey with a bunch of people I just met. That was mostly my social life out in Arizona. So yeah, I'm happy to be back. Thank you, Pope John Pitbull.
I visited Nick multiple times in Arizona. Absolutely loved it out there. I think the West is the best place to live if you were born there and you were from there and you developed your life there and started there. Me, I have all my friends and family here. I have a lot of things to do on the weekends, and I have a lot of things to do weeknights. I would have none of those things to do if I moved to any of the Western states, Arizona, Colorado, all these places I love to visit. So I think that's kind of what ultimately it comes down to, as Nick kind of said in his answer. You have more to do here, and that's just kind of life right there in a nutshell. Like, I know I get a lot of crap. I'm sorry.
There's actual like real pizza and Italian food here. There really isn't any of that out in Arizona.
That goes without saying. But, I get a lot of crap on the Fantasy Football Today podcast, Nick, for kind of overrating the northern New Jersey area and New York area. And part of it is a shtick, but part of it is just, look, like, you grew up there, you know it, and you know the things that make you happy. So that's that. Mike, the dietitian, says, assuming the offensive line continues to play at a higher and more cohesive level and Neighbors continues to shine, does that secure Joe Schoen's job, considering his biggest objectives of the last 2 years were simply fixing the offensive line and giving Daniel Jones a playmaker? And has he earned the chance to keep his job?
I think if those things do materialize, it does secure Joe Schoen's job. I think a lot needs to go wrong for Joe Schoen to be fired. I think a decent amount needs to go wrong for Brian Daboll not to be retained. I don't believe John Mara wants to part ways with these 2 years after them being here, similar to what he did to Pat Shurmur, Ben McAdoo, and Joe Judge. But do I think he earned a chance to? I think he did. I think he has earned a chance to keep his job, but I think that seat is getting hot as well at this point. Look at the quarterback decision, that Daniel Jones decision. We've said it so many times on the podcast. That's going to be that could be the wrecking ball to Joe Schoen's tenure here. If that thing ends up imploding, I don't know. And this is a variable here. I don't know how it's going to be handled when the Giants are, if they are 2 wins, 3 wins, and it's like week 10 at that point, and they have to bench Daniel Jones for contractual reasons. With that being built into his contract, the injury guarantee, what will that do to John Mara's impression on Joe Schoen? Do I think he's earned a chance? Sure, a chance. But again, this is kind of a week to week. Let's see how the Giants handle the rest of the season type of answer from me.
It's fair. I mean, look, he's done a good job fixing this offensive line so far, as we've seen it. And that's something no GM before him has been able to do somehow. And, Neighbors was, I don't want to say fell into his lap, but in some ways did kind of fall into his laps in this draft class. I mean, the Titans made their decision, or not the Titans, the Chargers made their decision, and it's a good one too. Alt's been great, but Neighbors, in my opinion, should have never been on the board at 6 overall in any draft class. He's that good of a talent. With that said, I think a lot will depend on the development of players like Kayvon Thibodeau and some of their second and third round picks over the last few years. Also, I think something to consider when it comes to, will Joe Schoen be brought back? Will Brian Daboll be brought back? Is if the Giants win games this year, right? They're 1-3. And we know one thing about John Mara. He overrates wins in lost seasons. That's just the situation. He believes in trying to get to 6, 7, 8 wins as something that is a barometer of success. I don't personally believe in it the way he does in these lost seasons, but he does, and it matters to him. He doesn't want to be the laughing stock of the NFL. I would argue you are the laughing stock of the NFL, regardless if you, like last year, the Giants winning 6 games versus 3 games. I don't personally believe that changed if they're the laughing stock of the NFL. Everyone knew they were a dead team. But to him, it matters to win 6 versus 7 versus 8 versus 3 and 2 and 4. So I think it does matter if these guys can get some wins at the end of the season. And let's be honest, the Giants have been in every single game except for the first game. against a team that is now 4-0. So to me, that matters as well. Now, I will say one thing, Nick, about the quarterback situation. We're going to get to more of this, but it's something interesting. The Giants kind of sold us this bill, Nick, that look, and we've addressed it, that look, we didn't have a top 3 pick, nothing we can do about it. Nobody wanted to trade up. Fine, that's it. We'll go back with Jones. We don't really have the money to re-sign a player like Tyrod and fix the O-line. So we'll fix the O-line to try to make things good for Jones, and we'll get what we can get at quarterback. And that was Drew Lock. But the reality is the Minnesota Vikings were in a situation where they had to completely restart at quarterback, and they brought in Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold's now 4-0, looking really good. So it's not impossible. You can't just say, no, nothing we can do, throw our hands up. There was no options. The Vikings were in the same situation, if not worse. And figured it out immediately with Sam Darnold. We didn't even consider a player like Sam Darnold, the Giants. And they haven't really consired any.
I think they did consider a Sam Darnold. I think that was something on Hard Knocks, but they went with the cost-effective option, which was Drew Lock at about half the price.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. They didn't consider paying that money that you would need to get a Sam Darnold type. But also at the same time, Sam Darnold was guaranteed a real shot to compete. So was Russell Wilson at the time when he signed with the Steelers. No one who signed with the Giants was really given that option. Exactly. And that's another problem here that we've run into with this Daniel Jones situation. This kind of, as some people like to call it, like what do they call it? The scholarship that he's been on with his time with the Giants.
That's that's a Van Wilder scholarship at this point.
It is. It's crazy.
It's wild how many years this guy gets. But if there's any light at the end of this Daniel Jones tunnel, look, there's a lot of teams in the NFL right now, Dan, who have taken risks on former quote unquote busts. And those busts end up becoming very good quarterback options in the league. Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, Geno Smith in Seattle. We got Sam Darnold right now in Minnesota. The Justin Fields in Pittsburgh's thing. I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but right now they're 3-1. They're playing solid football at this point. So there are a lot of teams that have been in similar situations where they were looking for quarterbacks and they signed quarterbacks who were castaways to these short contracts, and they ended up playing out of their minds. And now all of a sudden you actually have a quarterback you can rely on, somebody who was quote unquote a bust. So a lot of teams have replicated this in the past, and some teams have failed in an attempt to replicate that same exact strategy. But it's something that maybe the Giants will look into in the future when they part ways with Daniel Jones, and if they win too many games and they can't get a top quarterback.
Yeah, that's a great point, and teams have done it. You mentioned some great examples: Darnold, Baker. The list goes on. There's obviously, like you said, some misses, but that's something we can consider on a future podcast, like who can be that guy for the Giants next offseason, when and if and when they cut Daniel Jones. Okay, Andrew Carmichael 5817 asks, will you guys ever break down some of the better quarterback tape? I'd love to see the other side of things with other quarterbacks around the NFL. Can Jones' deep balls be fixable? Because I agree his decisions have been pretty good this year, but the throws are lacking consistency. Is it possible for you guys to, for example, break down some of Eli's games? I love the pod. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you so much. We don't have access to Eli all 22. That would be amazing. I would suggest tuning in to the defensive all 22 and see the Giants' opponents, some of those quarterbacks. This year, Sam Darnold really teed up the New York Giants. Watson had one good throw, and that was about it. Dak didn't really need to do all that much, but Dak Prescott is always a quarterback that if you want to watch good quarterback play on all 22, just tune into Dak Prescott, especially from a mental side of things. But yeah, no, I wish we had Eli's all 22. Dan and I have been talking about that for 3 off seasons now, and I just don't know how to acquire it.
We don't know how to acquire. We would love to do all 22 breakdowns in the offseason of the Giants playoff runs with Eli Manning. I would love to do just any of that 2011 season where he threw for almost 5,000 yards, because that pass protection was ranked 32nd. I would just love to see how he navigated that and was able to throw for so many yards that year. But we don't have access to that tape. As far as the other quarterbacks tape, I'd love to do just an offensive film breakdown of other quarterbacks. But simply put, Nick and I don't have the time for it, unfortunately, because it would be great. All right, this next one is from somebody who I wanted to shout out, Mr. Brightside 8810. Look, Mr. Brightside, you're one of my favorite people on our YouTube channel, because every time we drop a post, you always do what I do, which is, grovel for the likes, grovel for the comments. And I'm going to do that right now. If you're watching this show, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. We need your help. To be quite frank, if you hit the like button and you reply and say, great show, or anything, or I like this point, it will drive this up the YouTube algorithm. And based on that, we will find new people to listen to and consume our podcast. We need your help. In our opinion, we deliver a great show, and we should be higher than 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I've seen a lot of you agree with that opinion in the comments. So For those of you who haven't liked already, please like. And Mr. Brightside is somebody who really helps us grow this show. So he says, we know that we're going to need a quarterback next season, but we also need a true cornerback one. Good point. Do you think we can realistically get a cornerback one in round 2? Or will we have to break the bank open, seeing we will need to have that round 1 pick to be a QB? Oh, that's not something I agree with, but I want to hear your take.
Yeah, prognosticating this far out, it's difficult, Mr. Brightside. I want to, err on the side of Mr. Brightside and just say, hey, maybe we can get both. Look, man, there have been like number 1 cornerbacks or number 2 good cornerbacks who have been drafted in round 2. It really just depends on the person, how they develop. There's a lot that kind of goes into that. So it's a little bit too early to answer this, but to answer your question, yeah, I think it is possible for that to happen.
Yeah, it's possible. And I'm more of a cornerback in round 1 kind of guy. I like getting my guys there. I think it's such a hard position to develop in the NFL. And as far as quarterback goes, I'm definitely not with you, Mr. Brightside. I'm not take a quarterback round 1 no matter what. I'll never be that guy. I think that's how you lead to Kenny Pickett's and Drew Lock. I'm not Drew Locks. And what was that guy? Jake Lockers and types Daniel like that. Jones. Christian Ponders, Daniel Jones. Another example of that. Dave Gettleman had to find his guy that he could retire to Nantucket with. And then he convinces himself of some guy that never really had the arm talent, never had the processing or the anticipation to be anything real, as we've seen. But with that said, they might not need to take a quarterback. They might value that quarterback at that pick. So then they would have to kind of figure out a different way to get a true cornerback one, but it's too far in the future. I do appreciate the comment though. Hemi G asks, do you think there's a chance with whatever draft pick we have, we go number 1 corner available? This is pretty similar, overtaking QB, and sign a 1-year vet QB until the 2026 draft? He's eyeing Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, I think that can easily happen. Will Johnson and Travis Hunter are transcendent type of defensive prospects at this moment. I think the Giants, they would have to love this quarterback for them to bring it in, but we know that they're itching to get a quarterback. So if they even like a quarterback, they may convince themselves that they love a quarterback and then maybe take that quarterback over Will Johnson or Travis Hunter. So that could actually happen too.
Yeah, it's a great question. And Nick, this kind of goes to like the question asked earlier about my confidence level in Joe Schoen. I will say one thing about this regime I haven't liked is I do feel like they've been somewhat reactionary and somewhat need, do things right now. And so I want to see how that plays out in this draft process. Because if I'm going to be honest with you, there's a couple things in my mind. One, I prefer a Will Johnson or Travis Hunter right now to a Jalen Milroe or any of these types of quarterbacks that could be taken there. Because 2, I want Iamaleava or I want Arch Manning. I think those are the 2 quarterbacks in the next couple classes that can change and define a franchise for you. I am a big watch it, see it, know it with these quarterback prospects. I want somebody with that kind of game level changing arm talent like an Iamaleava. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I think it's Iamaleava. I think that's how you pronounce it. Or Arch Manning. And also that difference-making ability. You see it when you watch Arch, dude. He just understands space so well, where to put the football. That 50-yard, that he made a field side far hash throw that hit a receiver in stride for a touchdown last week against Mississippi State. We don't even see that from our quarterback.
That's college, too. The hashes are so much wider.
Right. It's even harder throw in college. And he made it last week and it hit the receiver in stride. We don't see that from our quarterback. We've seen it 5 times in his whole 6-year career from shorter hashes. So like,
outside the numbers, yeah.
Outside the numbers, land outside the numbers, right. To the left of this receiver. Like, I want that, like, to be honest. Like, I have some hope for Jalen Milroe with Brian Daboll and all these guys. But I'll tell you right now, Nick, like, even if we draft a quarterback round 1 and we have a bad year next year, I am going to be in the camp of don't even worry about that asset. Get one of these real talents, these difference-making quarterback prospects.
Yeah, that actually bleeds right into the next question from A Complex Gun. He says, hey guys, not sure where to send mailbag questions, but if the Giants suck this year, but have a chance to get Arch Manning, would the pain be worth it? Maybe Daboll gets another year with legit quarterback talent like Manning and a second year, more refined neighbors. I'm sure it won't be a hard sell to Mara despite his always play to win mentality. I think it would be a very hard sell to Mara to suck for an entire year, to basically tank to get Arch Manning. That'd be it. That'd be an impossible sell to John Mara. So, but for your question, yeah, I wouldn't mind it. Like, I don't even know if I wouldn't mind. I don't know if that's like the correct way to phrase it. I don't want to tank for something, but the Giants might not be in a position if they don't have a good quarterback to win football games. And at that point, you might lose games because other teams are better than you and other teams are trying to win because they're trying to go to the playoffs and they're trying to win a Super Bowl. And then that could lead to the possibility of drafting one of these studs in the 2026 draft.
Completely agree with you on Nick, but I will say this. I don't like the idea, any idea that involves like Arch Manning as part of our plan. There's so many factors that would have to come into play for the Giants to get Arch Manning on this roster. Not only would they, first of all, they're not going to tank. They'll never do that. And I want to make that clear. Teams have tried. The Dolphins got caught doing that and lost a first round pick. The NFL, the next time this NFL catches a team doing this, I am predicting it will be a much harsher punishment than even just a first round pick. It could be really bad. So I don't think any team will do that. And Mara would never do that himself. The second thing is, even if you did tank, which you're never going to do for the Giants, that doesn't even guarantee you Arch Manning. Like, look at what happened 2 years ago, and it worked out for the Texans because they got CJ Stroud. But like, they were the last team all year. They were in last place, and then they won that stupid game at the end, and they lost the first pick. And that could happen to any team, anytime. And that happened multiple years before that, like with the Jets, with the Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence thing. This just happens all the time throughout NFL history. So don't put this plan in your place, in your mind of like, the Giants can get Arch Manning. One team's going to get Arch Manning. It's going to mostly be, I don't want to say luck-based, but it basically is. And maybe it'll be the Giants, but it might not be. And it's more likely that it won't be.
That was the biggest middle finger a departing coach could give to
Lovey.
the organization, Lovey Smith. But then it ended up working out beautifully. I think they probably would have took CJ Stroud at 1 anyways, but that's just me kind of guessing at this point. Enzo Baldanza asks, thank you. I remember in a podcast a few weeks ago, Dan mentioned that he is sure that the Giants are selecting a quarterback in the 2025 draft. In the 2024 draft, Giants didn't reach for a quarterback, in no part due to Daniel Jones being on the roster. What convinces you the Giants will do so now? In my opinion, doing so would be evidence of an incoherent and thus faulty process from Joe Schoen.
Well said, Enzo. And I agree it would be evidence of those things. And I'm just not sure in my mind that they'll be able to hold off with the pressure that comes from, look, John saying, we gave you this year. We gave you the extra year in 2024. And we said, we know you're kind of in a tough position with Daniel Jones. We'll get through it. We'll see how things are. We hope to improve on the O-line. Neighbors makes the difference you thought he would make. And if those things continue to be true, John will say, look, successful season. We know you were hamstrung by Jones. But then it's like, but clock is ticking. Get your quarterback now and show me what you got. And I'm just not sure they're going to be able to hold off again another year on taking a quarterback. And it would be part of a faulty process, but that's kind of just like what it is in the NFL. There's pressure to take a quarterback at all times. I even think in some ways, like Minnesota felt that pressure with JJ.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think they liked JJ though.
They did. Denver definitely felt that pressure with Knicks, I think.
Yeah, it's really hard with Sean Payton to really judge what the hell that guy's thinking.
True. All right. Robert Popkin says, in honor of October, what are your favorite horror films?
Ooh, what are our favorite horror films? Okay. I like anything with zombies. I'm a big zombie fan. Like, I grew up playing Resident Evil, absolutely loved Resident Evil, Dawn of the Dead, all movies like that, Night of the Living Dead, big into zombie movies and classics too. Like, you can't go wrong with, I mean, The Exorcist at this point, it's like a classic movie. It's very old school, but I'm always down for a good horror movie. I just like some sort of originality and some depth to the storytelling. And some of the stuff can be a little banal at this point, but I do love a good scary movie that I have not seen on a cold October night in the Northeast. It's a little bit different than experiencing it out in Arizona.
In the desert. Yeah. I'm not Nick. I'm not as much of a horror fan, to be honest. I don't really like the genre at all, but I do agree with Nick's assessment. If I'm going to watch a horror film or enjoy it at all, it has to be the thoughtful ones, not the gore ones, not the those types of ones. The one that comes to mind is 28 Days Later, I think it's called, or the first of that variety where the guy wakes up.
28 Days Later.
It's a zombie movie, but I'm
kind of. See, that could be a debate. Is it a zombie movie, or is it more of like a rabies virus that infects people? Because once you shoot the zombies, they tend to kind of go down, and then they die off in 28 days because they're not nourished, because they're not getting sustenance. So is it actually a zombie? Because a zombie means that you're dead and you're coming back to life, and you can basically be a skeleton, and you don't die unless the contact to the head, right? Unless you sever the spinal cord, being able to coordinate the body. So I would argue that 28 Days Later isn't a zombie movie, but it falls in the category of zombie movies. And I also love the fact that I'm sitting here talking about depth, and then I'm like, I also love zombie movies, because most zombie movies have absolutely no depth to them. Those are more gory, but I just love that kind of.
Yeah, I think that's like all I like out of that. I mean, as a kid, I watched Poltergeist, and that scared the hell out of me. See, I was like scarred as a kid watching some of these horror movies, and like I just don't really enjoy that feeling from a movie, like getting scared. Anyway, Rumpelstiltskin 89 asks, are the running game woes more of a scheme issue or an execution issue? Why have tight ends been so uninvolved in our passing game? Fun one. Make the best roster you can out of the players acquired through the draft and free agent by Gettleman and Shane.
Okay, let's start with those first ones. Yeah. Okay, the running game woes, I did a breakdown on this on the channel if you guys want to go check it out. I think Dallas and Mike Zimmer just adjusted, and the Giants weren't really equipped or ready to deal with that adjustment. I think it is a combination of scheme from the Dallas game, But prior to that, I do think it's execution. The Cleveland game, I'm sorry, the Washington game, we saw those double teams. They came together. We were raving about how good they were. That's the only game we've seen that. Minnesota, you could kind of throw that one out. The Browns, they didn't really have that all that well. And then Dallas just took advantage of them. If you guys want to go check out why, go watch that video. So I think it is a combination of both. I'm hoping that it gets rectified. I think maybe with more time together, there will be more of a cohesive unit. There's also, they've been running different types of plays. The one that they've had the most success with is duo. And the Lions ran duo down the throat of the Seattle Seahawks. So hopefully the Giants can replicate that, especially if the Seahawks are as injured as they were against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer for the first one. I'll just go on to the second one. Why have the tight ends been so involved in the passing game? I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it's just continuing to become a trend that's solidifying itself. The Giants are a two-man passing game. It's very concentrated. It's Malik Neighbors and it's Wan'Dale Robinson. And I think a big reason for that is that it makes it easier for this kind of quarterback to execute the quick game. I've talked for a while. I don't think Jones is a good processor. I think you put too much on his plate and things get really bad. That's what happened with Jason Garrett, essentially. So this is a good way to get him to get the ball out of his hands. Just look to Neighbors or look to Wan'Dale. They'll be your first reads a lot of the time, and we'll design them in ways where they'll be open or open enough for you to get them the football. So I don't think tight ends are the first read often in this offense, and he's not a quarterback, in my mind at least, who gets through his reads very fast.
Even back in 2022, Dan, when Daniel Bellinger had his good rookie season, a lot of Daniel Bellinger's catches were all off checkdowns when he released from blocking. Like, it's not like Correct. They had a lot of plays designed for Daniel Bellinger unless it was in the red zone. So the Giants they've designed one play in the red zone for tight ends, and that was the one to Theo Johnson. And also Theo Johnson playing poorly has contributed to this. Because if you remember week 1, he had like 4 targets, I think, 4 or 5 targets, and he didn't catch any of them. I don't think he was in the right location for about 2 of them. And the other ones were Daniel Jones and him weren't on the same page. And I don't know if that was Jones or Johnson. I believe it was probably Johnson, because he seems like he's drinking water out of a fire hose right now in this offense and his short time in the NFL. So I can't really blame the Giants for not using the tight ends if you're successfully moving the football with Neighbors and Wan'Dale, but I hope it does regress a little bit more to the mean and they start spreading the ball out to other aspects to maybe alleviate the burden that is on Wan'Dale and Neighbors, because we've seen Neighbors take a lot of shots. Like, I love the fact that he's the focal point of the offense, that he's the fulcrum. He is what makes this offense click. He's going to get hurt, dude, if he keeps taking these shots, dude. So, like, there is a part of me that's like, we do have, Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson, and a couple other guys who could use the football every now and again.
And he already is hurt from taking these shots. Malik Neighbors, he has a concussion. He may play this week, may not, depending on when you're listening to this week. But look, the fact of the matter is, I until I see it, I don't believe that Daniel Jones is going to run some offense where he's spreading the ball around. I don't think Daboll wants to try that, because I think things get really ugly if he does try that. So this is kind of working for him for what he has. As far as the last question goes, we're going to skip it just because we have so many questions. We want to get to as many people as we can.
What's up, everybody? It's Jerry Ferrara. I've got a new podcast called Throwbacks with Heisman Trophy winner Matt Leinart, where we will be talking about all things sports, all things pop culture, and all things about our lives. From football locker rooms to Hollywood green rooms, we've got you covered. We're your weekly destination for the games you want to hear about and the stories you won't forget. Listen to Throwbacks on Apple Podcasts or Spotify with new episodes every Thursday.
What's up, big Blue Banter listeners? I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. And all of Mint Mobile's plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. Now, what if I told you that you no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. Whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every time. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code BIGBLUE for 20% off plus free shipping. Get the shave you desire. Be silky smooth and get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code BIGBLUE at manscaped.com.
So Sal, who is not a content creator, according to him,
Debatable
content. Yes, I don't know what that's about. Forget the future of this regime for a moment. If you could trade for just one player to improve the 24 team and beyond, what position and player type would you choose? Your choices are quarterback, outside corner, or interior defensive lineman. I guess. Yeah, great question. Those are the 3 biggest needs.
Yeah, quarterback, if I had to choose one, it'd still be Patrick Mahomes, even though he's struggling. If not him, for whatever reason, Josh Allen. Outside corner, Patrick Surtain, Denver Broncos. That would probably be the first cornerback that I would think of that I would want. And then an interior defensive lineman. Let's just kind of break this up by position like this to pair with Dexter Lawrence. Actually, let's bounce this off each other. Who is the interior defensive lineman, Dan? Well, first, who's your quarterback and outside corner? And then who's the interior defensive lineman in the league that you think would pair best with Dexter Lawrence on this roster in this scheme?
So first of all, my quarterback is the guy who's breaking records for EPA right now through the first 4 games of his career. He's completing 90% of his passes. It's Jaden Daniels. No, I'm kidding. It's not Jaden Daniels. I just want to piss off some fans real quick. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes for me still, despite his struggles so far this year. Though it's something to consider. He's an older quarterback and he is struggling right now. It's still him for me. I mean, dude, the guy has he's Brady part 2, winning every Super Bowl and kills you every playoff. So you're ahead in all these playoff games, and then he goes on a drive at the end of the game to win the game. He's one of the most clutch players I've ever seen play the position outside of types like Brady. Outside corner is Patrick Surtain. It's not Sauce Gardner for me. I think Patrick Surtain has been unbelievable this year. He's taking his game to a new level and really defining that Denver defense, which I don't think has that much talent outside of Surtain, which is interesting. Now, this is the interesting one, interior defensive lineman, because you could go for the guys like the Vita Vea types to pair with a Lawrence, because you put those 2 in the middle and you're not going to get run on through the interior. Or you can have fun and put a Chris Jones on the interior defensive line. So I think it's Chris Jones for me. I'm having fun.
Yeah, Chris Jones as well for me. Because Chris Jones is also a really good run defender. Now, it might not be Vita Vea, but he's a damn good run defender, and he is just an absolute nightmare to block.
You know what, though? You know who comes to mind as a potential because of the age and things like that? How about Jalen Carter?
Yeah, he actually came to my mind. I don't know. I think from a skill set standpoint, sure, there are still some certain things about his personality that I'm not sold on.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Connor Weingarten asks, wasn't there a point in Jones's career when we thought he was good at throwing deep? Is it a loss of confidence, the ACL? I want you to answer this question first, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. You've brought this up a lot. It was a stat from Pro Football Focus where he had the highest completion percentage targeting deep, but he only had 19 or 20. I'm kind of pulling numbers out of my ass here, but he didn't do it that often that year when he had the high completion percentage. A lot of it was in garbage time as well. I think it was probably misremembered a little bit when it comes to Jones's deep passing. I think you go back to his rookie season, he hit a lot during Detroit when they were down big with Darius Slayton. He connected deep. I never really thought he was an excellent deep thrower. I do believe he was better than what we're seeing this year, though. I think this is probably his stone worst deep passing that we've seen throughout his entire career. Could that be the ACL? Maybe, but I also don't think he has the deep accuracy or the deep arm talent that some Giant fans believe he had in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that answer is almost identical to what I would have said, Nick. So it's interesting we have brain lock on this.
Well, we've talked about it on the
We've
podcast though
talked about
too,
it a
man.
lot,
Yeah.
but I did want to get your opinion because I've definitely always felt like his deep passing was way overrated by Giants fans. And I know that there's a stat that stat doesn't even take into account like ball placement or maximizing yards after the catch, right? Like if you hit a deep throw and a player catches it, does that mean that it was a great deep throw, or does it mean that he just caught it because he was open, right? Like I mean, I just feel like everyone should
No,
be
you're
able. Yeah, it's just frustrating to me because I don't really see how anyone ever thought he was a good deep ball thrower. But I agree with you that he wasn't bad. He used to be like a decent to pretty average deep ball thrower. But like now, and it's probably his stone worst year, it's just like this has never been what people like. Good deep ball throwers, that's the Matt Staffords of the world. Like that's
yeah.
what a good deep ball looks like. It hits the receiver in stride outside the numbers and he walks it in for a touchdown. Even Tyrod Taylor was a good deep ball thrower. We saw that last year with our own eyes. Like people should be able to see the difference, I think.
Daniel Jones can put the football into the area code of the wide receiver where he can realistically come down with it. And we've seen that throughout his career where Darius Slayton will climb that proverbial ladder and he'll make the contested catch and then he'll fall down. Or maybe he'll dive and he'll drop some too. Maybe he'll dive and he'll make the catch. And it's like, yeah, the connection, 40-yard gain. Woo, that's awesome. But you never really saw Daniel Jones putting it on a line or putting the beautiful touch over the top of a cornerback who just missed it. And then the wide receiver hauls it in and he strolls into the end zone. It's like, that's very rare throughout his career. And that's what you see from the Matt Staffords. That's what you see from like vintage Joe Flacco. That's what you see from a lot of the great deep ball passers. Daniel Jones has never been that, unfortunately.
Right. And even Tyrod, who's not a great deep ball passer, but a version of what's better, did it last year. Back-to-back games, 70-yard touchdown passes to Slayton. Both were walk-in touchdowns on perfectly delivered balls in stride, hits the receiver, and this year, to be honest, I just put up a cut up of it's a 3-minute plus cut up, Nick, of Daniel Jones's attempts on the deep balls this year. And this year, it's definitely worse than it's ever been. Like a lot of these throws are nowhere near the receiver. They're not even in a place where you can like make an acrobatic catch. A few have been the one where Neighbors ripped out an interception against Cleveland, and then the one where Neighbors has the burn against Dallas, where he burns on the double move and he's wide open, and DJ kind of just like lollipops it up there, and you can't really miss that throw if you just kind of loft one up there. And Neighbors kind of turns his body, fields it like a center fielder making a catch in the outfield. But like, just listen to that description of these throws. Like one was a ripped out interception. The other was a fielded center field throw where Neighbors is just kind of like chilling back there. That's like, come on, guys. Let's use our eyes a little bit here.
He's completed 2 passes, 2 explosive plays. One of them should have been intercepted. The other one was a wide open play, Malik Neighbors, where he had to stop. So let's be honest about the situation.
But it's a good thing to note that it's been worse than it's ever been by a large margin based on that. Like it's never been this bad at all. So maybe that is ACL. Maybe it is timing. But I'll say, who gives a crap? This is not right regardless. Like we don't care about, like, why are we caring about that?
And it's funny too, because one of our biggest gripes about Daniel Jones heading into this season was his reluctance to actually make those throws. Now he's attempting to make those throws and he just can't complete them. Right. It's like, is that why you were reluctant in the past?
Maybe it might've been, it really might've been. And it might be why the coaches were electing to want him to do that. Okay. Fundy asks, with the insight from Hard Knocks, who on the Giants staff is a viable candidate for a front office job for either the Giants or the league? What other GM, head coach, offensive coordinator, DC candidates interest you for the Giants' future?
It's too early for this. I don't want to sit here and just kind of come up with it off my head. This would be more of a well thought out answer, Fundy, one that we could do an entire podcast, if not 2 or 3 on something like this. So I don't really have anybody. Do you have anybody?
I mean, just Brandon Brown, I think is interesting, but yeah, I think this is going to be a question that unfortunately we would need time for.
And you brought up Ben Johnson before. He's someone who certainly interests me, and he's also somebody who has options. I don't know if you'd want to come to the New York Giants, especially if Brian Daboll's fired, third coach in a row, or fourth coach in a row. No. See, this is
no quarterback.
Fourth coach in a row that would be fired 2 years into the job too. He's let go, which is like
stepping into no quarterback situation.
Stepping into no quarterback. He can go to like a really good situation if he wants to. He could have last year too, so he's comfortable where he's at.
I mean, he could coach Trevor Lawrence. I know a lot of people have given up on Trevor Lawrence, but he may not be one of them. And Trevor Lawrence still has a lot of talent. He's just not playing good football. Dills 82 asks, in the face of him struggling to execute on the deep ball, what do you make of Daboll's decision not to rejigger the offense to cater to Daniel Jones like he did in 2022? You would think if he were trying to do whatever he could to win games, he would. Conspiracy time. Is this a prove to Mara it's never going to work scenario, so he won't interfere with him getting cut before this next season?
No, I don't think so, Dills. I believe this is just they're trying to win games. There's some deep shots that are available. Daniel Jones is trying to execute on them, and he's just failing to. But other than that, this offense is still similar to the 2022 offense regarding the fact that it is centralized around quick passing attack. It's centralized around, hey, we're going to look to the half field. We're going to put this defender in conflict, and we're going to find a solution, whatever that defender does. Then we're going to attack what he doesn't do, and then we're going to pick up yards. A lot of those reads are based on Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors working together. So I don't think that this is some deep conspiracy. I just think Daniel Jones isn't executing and he's failing to take advantage of the opportunities that are on the football field.
Yeah, I actually disagree with the analysis here, Dills. Not respectfully. I think he has catered this offense to Daniel Jones. It's still a one read offense. He's just, now that he has Neighbors, it works a little bit better. Again, the Giants are the most concentrated passing game in the entire NFL between Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. And so that's to help Daniel Jones get his first read and get the ball out there faster. So I still think this offense, and he's not fewer design runs, fewer bootlegs, because he's not the same athlete maybe he was. But you still see some of those as well. So I still think I think every offense is going to design vertical shots. And it's just a matter of you're not going to ever design an offense with no vertical shots.
Yeah. And again, when Dan says one read offense, he doesn't mean like, oh, there's just one read in the play. Like there's still progressions to go through. It's like with any offensive coordinator, they're going to design plays based on the defense they think they're going to see. And Daniel Jones knows this pre-snap, post-snap. That's why he gets the ball. He confirms what he saw pre-snap to post-snap. If it's not that, there's an answer built into that, whether that's on the backside of the play or what have you. But the Giants, I feel like, and Brian Daboll does a good job calling plays based on what the defense's tendencies are and then having guys open, whether that be man or zone. A lot of that is also confirmed in the pre-snap portion of this. And Daniel Jones does a solid job judging what the defense is going to be in pre to post snap. That's something that he improved upon when Brian Daboll assumed the head coaching role back in 2022. Now, we didn't see it too much in 2023 because the offensive line was so bad, but I think we've seen that progress as well in 2024. Problem is, though, you still need to play outside of structure. The defense is going to throw curveballs at you. Can you adapt? Can you hit on those explosive plays? And those are all questions that we have not seen answered from Daniel Jones quite yet.
Yeah, great point, Nick. And I think, that's kind of a little bit of a insight into why maybe we believe that Brian Daboll is good at designing an offensive game plan, because he's been able to have these first reads actually work at times. The pre to post snap first reads, what you're expecting, versus other coordinators who we've seen with Jones. It struggles. It's not open at first. And then, you get the whole Jones doesn't have the first read. He's in the pocket. He's kind of panicky. He bails right, or he just takes a stupid sack, or does all the things that he's done at previous points in his career.
All right. So Christy Z and whatever it is.
Yeah, Christy Z.
31555. Thank you so much. Hopefully it's not I'm not going to try. Christy Z. Do you guys think Daboll will get the tight ends involved in the passing game soon? I feel that would open up more for a passing attack, take more pressures off the wide receivers, specifically with Bellinger and Theo. We answered this a little bit before, Christy Z. We hope that it will happen just to maybe take a little bit of burden off of those wide receivers, as you said, and also to just add another punch to this Giants offense. But still, this offense is going to run through those two, Neighbors and Wan'Dale. And also, when the tight ends do receive targets, specifically Theo Johnson, you got to be on the same page as your quarterback, and you got to catch those damn targets. And that's something that Theo has not been able to achieve through 4 games.
Great answer. And we did discuss it earlier as well. Pope John Pitbull asks, give me your top 3 movies, either all-time or current faves, any genre, and your most listened to musical artist or podcast this year.
Okay, so I'll start with the podcast. I got to think on the movies a little bit. I'll start with the musical artist. I listen to a lot of like Mac Miller, Kid Cudi, Stained a little bit. I've been incorporating them into it. Breaking Benjamin, Avenged Sevenfold, and then obviously Queen and Red Hot Chili Peppers and the bands that are kind of like mainstays with me. And also I just listen to like stuff that's not really music, like Bo Burnham and like comedic type of insightful things that interest me as well. So that's my musical thing. Pod, I don't really listen to too many podcasts recently, I guess. So there's not really one there.
Yeah, for me, I don't even have to look at my Spotify most listened, because there's no debate. It's Grateful Dead. I found them maybe two and a half years ago.
Talk about it, baby.
Yeah, I found the Dead 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I'd never really listened. I mean, I'd heard songs my whole life, like all the popular ones, but I never really listened to them despite loving that kind of music. So it was kind of ridiculous. Then 2.5 years ago, I found them, and it's insane how often I listen to. There's so many live shows.
What's your favorite song?
That's a great question with the Dead. Like, it's hard. It's Althea, but I don't think that it is Althea, because Althea is just the sweetest song. But There are so many great songs that I don't know if I could even say it is definitely out there again, but like there's so many that I think are just on that tier as well. And
Touch of Grey to me. Touch of Grey, beautiful.
Touch of Grey is up there for me too.
Beautiful
It's
song.
a beautiful song with beautiful lyrics and a great idea behind the song. And I love that song too. But it's become to the point where I'm obsessed with this band. Like I'm just shuffling through 1974, 1977 live shows. Like there's 2 playlists on Spotify that are just 74, 77 live. And it's just constant every time I get into my car type of thing. And at the gym, it's crazy. But now I'm going to all the live cover bands too, like Dead & Co and J-Rad. It's like, I just want to hear Dead. That's all I want to do is listen to this band. So it's weird. It's an obsession. That's kind of how I am though. I get obsessed with things, golf, the Dead, like just who I am as a person. Podcast I listen to, I don't have time for a lot. The ones I listen to are Part of My Take for if I can have time to enjoy a pod. And, when I listen to Simmons pod, I just go to Parents Corner. I love the Parents Corner, the Bill Simmons pod. It's relatable. It's what I like about listening to pods. But then I also listen to Fantasy Football Today all the time for my job. So I just want to make sure I listen to every podcast.
I listen to Fantasy Football Today sometimes.
Nice.
Some fantasy podcasts, the footballers I listen to. But like other than that, I don't really listen to.
No shout outs to the Fantasy Football on our podcast. That's competitive. No, I won't allow that. Nobody will redact that in editing. Your most listened. I'll step in there. Your most listened to. The next favorite movies. That
could be a whole podcast. I could sit here and talk movies all day. I honestly don't have like one that I'm just like, if I say one right now, if you ask me in a month, it might not be in the list of 3. There's just like a bunch that are kind of globbed up there that I enjoy,
Sure. Yeah. I'll say it's tougher for me. Like I'm more of a TV show than movie guy, but I'll say 3. Pulp Fiction, my first ever favorite movie when I was young, and it still remains that way. Goodfellas.
Yeah.
1 and 2. And then I'm going to put Rounders in there. I just absolutely love Rounders. I've been trying to get Nick to watch Rounders for years.
Oh, I will.
There's so many good actors in it too. In addition to it, it's not just a poker movie. It's an amazing life movie and it's so well done. And you'd love it if you ever watched it. Okay. The second question is, will Daboll be retained and Schoen get the boot, or will both be retained by Mara? We've touched on this. It's to be determined.
It's certainly to be determined, but I can't see a scenario where Schoen gets the boot and Daboll is retained.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, Crash BX7 asks, I have a hard time blaming Daniel Jones's lack of above average arm talent for his below average deep throw completion percentage performance. What I see from around the league is better than average quarterbacks with average to below arm strength is the ability to process and anticipate receivers coming open downfield and throw into those deep open areas. If either or both of you agree, do you believe Daniel Jones can continue to grow this season into a more consistently capable deep thrower? If he can improve, would that change your opinion of if he should stay or go next season? Meaning, if he does improve, the likelihood of a top 5 pick to potentially get franchise quarterback would diminish, or I guess if he does improve, the likelihood of us getting a top 5 pick to draft another quarterback would diminish. Would a roughly $40 million quarterback per year salary be in line with the type of play, considering what quarterbacks are making now? Feel free to expound on your thoughts. Love you guys and the way you allude. Oh, this is a Nick word and I can't even pronounce it. Elucidate Giants football. Wow.
Thank you, Crash B. And I love this question too. My issue is, although Daniel Jones has everything that you said, the lack of above average arm talent, he doesn't have those fast eyes to anticipate those throwing windows that you're talking about. Like we've seen quarterbacks like Tua, who doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but his ability to anticipate where Tyreek, and he's thrown to Tyreek, I get that, where Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are going to be in between the numbers. It's great, dude. Like he's throwing that football before Tyreek, who's really quick, is even coming out of that break, and he's hitting him right in stride, and that allows Tyreek to do what Tyreek does best. We've never really seen Daniel Jones do that. Daniel Jones, he'll wait until the wide receiver is going into the break, the wide receiver starting to turn, and then the football kind of comes out. You never really see the wide receiver still running his route and the football is being released on time. It's just the slow eyes combined with the lack of anticipatory skills. And then you add on top of that the below average, or to be generous, average overall arm talent. You really don't have somebody who's going to be conducive for the deep passing game to actually be successful. And that's what Daniel Jones is. And that's one of the many reasons why the Giants have never had a sustained deep passing attack that has threatened defenses throughout Daniel Jones's entire time here.
Yeah, I think there's two great examples of what Nick just broke down. The first one being the offsides against Dallas. If he just sees that earlier, Darius Slayton, he doesn't have to make this massive throw to the field side far hash that gets outside the numbers to the right. Just get it, see it, figure it out earlier. Naturally, though, I don't think it's something that can be improved. That's my problem. I think it's kind of natural. And then it's a 30-yard throw instead of a 50-yard throw that gets undercut by the DB and intercepted. And the other one to me is one that he gets a lot of credit for this year, which is the touchdown pass against the Browns to Neighbors, not the one over the middle of the field, the one that Neighbors had to make that like acrobatic catch on toward the corner back pylon.
Yeah.
So that one, everyone's like, oh my God, did you see his throw from Daniel Jones? Because it came out hot, the ball, which was good velocity, and because he took a hit from Myles Garrett. But it's also kind of an example of if he sees that earlier or throws it with any kind of anticipation before Britton Neighbors gets into that break, he's not going to take that hit from Garrett, the same hit. He can protect himself. And also, the ball is going to probably be more accurate because he's going to be able to get rid of it earlier. Although I don't know about that as far as accuracy goes when it comes to him. So as far as can he continue to improve this or grow from this or blah, 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 I think Nick broke down why we're skeptical of that. But I think honestly, dude, even if he had all of that, I still don't think this is a quarterback who makes good decisions under pressure. I still think there's a lot lacking in his game outside of the deep passing. So I don't never want to really allocate $40 million in cap space from this point on going forward. And that's an even factor in the injury history, things like that scare me about this asset. So to me, it's done. Like I'm done with it. I've tried my hardest to be nice about this and to be really understanding and give him all these chances he can get. I know the fan base wants to give him a million chances, but for me, I'm just done with it. This is it. I've had enough, and I don't want this again for next year.
Kevin King asks, with the expected below average quarterback class in 2025, do you see the Giants trying to find a quarterback via trade or free agency? Two guys that intrigue me, although unlikely to be our future quarterback, are Hendon Hooker, trade, and Sam Darnold, free agency. Don't know Detroit's or Minnesota's long-term plans with those quarterbacks.
It's interesting. I would say your question's definitely possible. Did they get one via trade or free agency? As far as the two examples go, Hooker, I don't see why Detroit would trade him. There's just nothing that leads me to believe they would. So I'm going to rule him out immediately based on that.
Why though?
Because I think they view him as the long-term successor to Jared Goff. So why?
I thought that too. And then Jared Goff has been playing the way Jared Goff has played. And Nate Sudfeld was taking like substantial amount of second team reps throughout training camp. True. And I watched all that during the training camp joint practices with the Lions. And then Hendon Hooker would come in and take second team. But to me, if you were certain that Hooker was your guy long term, I don't think you would be mixing in Nate Sudfeld on the second team. I could be wrong there.
No, that's a great point. I think you're actually right about that. So maybe they don't view Hooker as a potential option for them long term. So maybe the Giants can get him cheap. So that's one interesting one. As far as Darnold goes, I don't think there's any possibility that he will hit the free agent market next year. I think either the Vikings will re-sign him long term, assuming he continues to play well, which again would then be, we would only be interested in him if he does. So I think they'd either re-sign him long term or just franchise tag him so no one else has an opportunity there.
And we got to realize, man, Goff's only 29 years old. So you have Hooker for 4 years. He already has two of them done. So that could be an option.
Yeah. But to the main question, yes, I think they will try to go explore all avenues for quarterback next year. Trade, free agency, everything will be explored for the next year.
All right. Zach asks, how do you think the Giants should go about addressing the offensive line for the future? Greg Van Roten is 34 and on a 1-year deal. Illuminor is 29 on a 2-year deal. And JMS hasn't shown much of anything, especially in the run game, to prove he can be a long-term starter at center.
So I'll say my take on this, but I want to really toss this to you, especially on the JMS front, Nick. But my take is Illuminor should be a part of the future. I think offensive linemen can play into their future, into their later years, and he doesn't have that much wear and tear. Obviously, Van Roten's a 1-year stopgap, so they need to figure out what's going on in the interior offensive line. I personally would have liked to see Evan Neal getting trained at guard. I know Zach, because I talked to him a lot, does not believe that he can really be a guard. I think he doesn't believe he can be a guard. I don't want to quote you on that, Zach, but I know you're not a fan of JMS. So I'll toss it to you on the JMS front, Nick. What are your thoughts on the interior as the future goes on between Runyon, JMS, and then whatever's going to happen at right guard?
Lock Runyon down. GVR, look, I think you said it well with Greg Van Roten. That's a 1-year stopgap. And then JMS, this is his second year. We got to be a little bit patient with this. He's dealt with some injuries throughout his second year, and you evaluate it. again, game by game. I know it's a boring analysis of it. I'm not ready to write JMS off. I just don't think John Michael Schmitz is ever going to be a top 5 center in this league. But if he could be a 12th best center or even 15th best center, that's somebody you hold on to. That's somebody that you don't have to pay him top dollar at the center position, and you can give him, a modest contract, a contract that he is worth, but it's not going to cripple you from a cap standpoint. You're not going to allocate too much to him. So right now, I think he is a bottom 3rd center in the league, maybe even a bottom 4th. He's kind of probably on that tier, but I still think there is room to grow for JMS, and him playing with a stable offensive line might at least help him mentally, and then possibly give him a little bit more confidence. He looks a little bit bigger this year. Maybe he had a little bit more strength. I haven't seen that translate to the field quite yet, and I'm still concerned with John Michael Schmitz in the initial portion of the snap. It seems like quick power moves get him. That was the death to Shane Lemieux. Now, John Michael Schmitz is a much better player than Shane Lemieux. I want to make that clear, but it's very safe to say that through the short tenure of John Michael Schmitz's career, that he is underwhelmed. So we need to see progress at this point.
Great. And what about Illuminor?
Yeah, no, we talked about it earlier. I want to
on board with that.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. We can't screw around with the right tackle position, Dan. We screw around with the right tackle position for way too long. If he continues to play as well as he's played, and we say this, he's the most penalized player on the Giants right now. He needs to clean that up. A lot of false starts. He got called, but I think 1 or 2 illegal men downfield, so he needs to stay tighter to the line of scrimmage. He knows all these things. He's a very bright guy. You listen to him talk, you're like, oh man, this guy has his head on straight. He's a locker room guy. He's never missed a practice. He was going to miss a training camp practice, came right back because he wanted to keep that streak alive. This is the type of dude you want in your locker room, and he's competent. So I want to retain that. I want to retain that for whoever the hell the quarterback is post Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I agree with that. The 130,000-foot view I would add is this, just for as we go about this future, Nick, every March and April. I wasn't as thrilled as Giants fans were when John Michael Schmitz was taken at 55 overall. I know a lot of Giants fans kind of just looked at mock drafts and were like, whoa, this guy was mocked in the first round. We got him at 55. This is a steal by Joe Schoen. I was lower on him. I made it clear throughout the process. I wasn't sure it was going to translate from a power standpoint against Big Tens, the NFL. I'm not ruling him out. But my point being, when we take these players like John Michael Schmitz at 55, it kind of feels like a bit of a need pick at that point, a bit of a, we like this guy, Bobby Johnson interviewed him. He's going to make all the calls, which apparently with this quarterback, you need a center who's going to be making the calls and like really good from that mental standpoint. But like in the end, if I'm going interior offensive line and the ceiling is only, especially center, and the ceiling is only potentially top 10, 12 range, I don't want to do that ever again, because I know you can find that in later rounds. Like the guy who, I think it was Seattle, the guy from Michigan who was taken in like the 5th round. Is that Seattle center? I don't know where he is. The kid from Michigan in that same draft class.
I'm not sure if he's starting for Seattle, but I remember the prospect. He has a name that is very difficult to just come up with off the top of your head. And there's a lot of O's and U's in it.
And I thought he was starting for whoever he was drafted by and playing good football, but that's one example. There's been a lot of centers you can find in the late rounds or even UDFAs who can give you in the range of a top 10, top 12, which is kind of what I'm getting at here.
Oluwatimi. Yes.
And just one example, I'd have to look into that. I don't follow 31 teams as well as the Giants, but there's examples of that, Nick, where you can get top 10, top 12 production out of a center. If I'm going to use a top 60 pick at a center, I need Ragnow types. I need Creed Humphrey types. I need guys who can be difference makers from this point on, or else don't count me in the camp of wanting to draft a center at that spot ever again. And maybe
he's
John Michael Schmitz,
though.
He's not star. He's not a good example. There's probably other examples. I know there are other examples of centers who can be top 10, top 12. If I want center top 60 again, it's got to be somebody with long-term upside to be top 5 at that position. It's just the nature of that position. It's a onesie position, and you're using a top 60 pick overall that can be used on a lot of talented players. Okay, Greg 1994 asks, my boomer dad is all in on firing Brian Daboll. He does have 50 years of football knowledge over me. Are the Giants struggling because of Daboll or a mere execution by the players put in place by Shane?
We all love our boomer fathers. Okay. So yes. I think look, he's the head guy. So fault has to go to Brian Daboll. Do I think it's solely on Brian Daboll? Absolutely not. There are a lot of reasons why this Giants team has not taken off. It's solely on Joe Schoen. Absolutely not. It predates Joe Schoen, but the mediocrity has persisted through Gettleman onto Shane, and now we're in year 3, and that mediocrity is still here. And there are common denominators that lead to the source of that mediocrity, and those common denominators, some of them were extended with the Joe Schoen era. And that falls on Joe Schoen, and that falls on John Mara, who I'm sure supported that. And that falls on Brian Daboll to some extent as well. So again, if this ship bottoms out, then yeah, I think your boomer dad is probably correct with you have to part ways and try to get somebody else in here. I don't think that's what John Mara wants to do. And I understand why John Mara doesn't want to do that. I think it's a complicated situation. And again, I hate to say this again, week by week, game by game, you evaluate this. A lot of it goes down to how this locker room stays intact. Remember last year, the locker room it crumbled though. A locker room crumbled with Wink Martindale, Brian Daboll. Was that just because Wink Martindale was a little bit different to deal or difficult to deal with? Possibly. But Brian Daboll has a temper. Brian Daboll doesn't seem like the easiest guy to deal with either. So that could factor into this decision-making as well. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I don't need to go any further on that. Market Mike asks, our thoughts on why Daniel Bellinger is under Theo Johnson, who has been awful. This is his take on Theo Johnson. No catches, blocking issues, and penalties.
Yeah, I think Daniel Bellinger, for whatever reason, they just look at Theo Johnson and they think he has more potential and more upside than Daniel Bellinger. And they want to use that potential and that upside and that athleticism. I'd argue Daniel Bellinger has a lot of those things as well. And I think Daniel Bellinger is a better player than Theo Johnson, and Daniel Bellinger should be playing over Theo Johnson. I'm a little biased. He's been on our podcast multiple times, Daniel Bellinger, and I'm grateful for that. But just trying to be as objective as possible, he is a much more effective and competent player than Theo Johnson is right now.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I mean, look, Daniel Bellinger's had limited opportunities in this offense this year, but he was wide open on one of his catches, and he looked pretty quick on that one to me. He had really good testing numbers at the combine as well. Kind of showed it a lot on tape as a rookie, played a crazy amount of snaps, and it seems like whatever's going on here is they phased him out of the offense. But, you know, I will give credit to the beat writers who predicted this a little bit earlier. I mean, they went to an extreme extent saying he would get cut, which I at the time said was ridiculous, and I stand by that. It obviously is proven to be ridiculous. They were never going to cut a player like that at his salary price and with his tape and, you know, what he's proven already on tape. But it's clear that this new tight end room, whatever it is, new tight end coach, is not as high on Bellinger as the one that drafted him. And they're high on Theo Johnson. They want to get him reps. So I think it's just, it's a little bit of that, unfortunately, for the Giants right now. And part of it is also this. I think this is a big part of it people don't realize, because somebody brought this up when I posted the 3-minute video of all Daniel Jones deep shots. There are plays within that video, Nick, where Chris Manhertz is blocking like an offensive tackle out there. That's how good of a job he's doing in pass protection. So it's like part of this is Manhertz needs to be on the field for this scheme or any scheme to work. He's that valuable of a player. These types of players are underrated in the NFL, but to coaches, they're not underrated by fans. But to coaches, they're not underrated. They're doing such an important job on every play. And that's what Manhertz does. It can be argued that he does a job that's more important than any tight end on this roster, to be honest about the situation. So
absolutely,
just for what you need,
especially in this offense,
for what you need. So that's part of it. He needs his snaps. Okay. Mike also asked, % the Giants draft a quarterback next season if the current trend continues?
Percent, I would say, I don't know, 60, but I'm just pulling that out of my rear end.
I'll say 65. I think there's going to be a lot of
in the first round. I'm going to add that caveat too.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of pressure on them. Third question, do we see Neal getting reps at right tackle if the season goes sideways? Interesting. I don't want to bench Jermaine Illuminor and then risk losing Jermaine Illuminor. Something would have to happen to Illuminor for Neal to see reps at right tackle. I would like to see Neal inside, though, because hopefully maybe he could be the future right guard, right? For Greg Van Roten. And then you have Illuminor and Evan Neal next to each other blocking on. That'd be fun to watch. Okay, Sean 1080088 asks, I got to stop pronouncing the numbers. We could just say Sean asks, is there any way, and pronouncing is not the right word, reading them. Is there any way Jones doesn't get cut this offseason? And assuming he does, what option should the team look into as a short-term bridge gap answer?
I don't have those quarterbacks off the top of my head right now in front of me, but they should look into that. I mean, they kind of tried to in 2022. It was a little bit different with Tyrod Taylor, but they brought him in for a reason to be a bridge quarterback. Jones played the way he did, and then they give him that contract, which we're all looking back on now like, what? But yeah, is Jones not going to get cut? Look, I think it's highly likely that he is released during this offseason and they eat the dead cap. But is there a situation where he may not be? Sure, if he balls out and all that kind of stuff, but I don't envision that happening.
Well, it's an interesting question. I think this is one where, Sal, the not content creator, and me, we discussed this a bunch because, I feel like my read, Nick, from the Hard Knocks and from things that I've heard that I can't share on this podcast is that the Giants are not high at all on Jones long-term in the organization, but they've proven the opposite so far with the contract extension, with not bringing any competition for him this offseason.
But they did bring in some but again, though,
Lock,
but it's not like real competition.
It's not
right?
real. We're not prioritizing a quarterback competition, I should say.
So if Drew Lock stepped into the training camp and was like balling, and he like adopted like to the offense very well, he had a rapport with neighbors very quickly and Wandale, do we think Daniel Jones would they have considered benching Daniel Jones?
Well, that's kind of the question. I don't think they would have considered it personally.
See, that sucks, man. That sucks.
Because I think
you're
Tyrod
right.
played better than Jones in training camp in 2022 and never got a chance to be the QB1 that year.
Yeah.
Because Jones had a bad 2022 camp, if we remember. He ended up having a good 2022 year, so they were proven, I guess, right in that, though I kind of think Tyrod could have been just as good, if not better, in 2022, and I'll stand by that based on his 2023 tape versus Jones' 2023 tape. But, you know, that was a big talking point. Emory Hunt was there at camp, and he said Tyrod was outplaying Jones, and he got destroyed by the Giants fan base for that. I saw the things people said to him about that. But ultimately, Tyrod is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, in my opinion. I know some people hate to hear that, and somehow don't think that's the most ridiculous thing they've ever heard, despite the fact that Tyrod had the 8th best clean pocket EPA last year versus Jones, who had the 42nd best, and DeVito had the 43rd best. Like, it was clear and obvious on tape that Tyrod was the better quarterback last year. He never got his opportunity in 2022, and I know he's injury prone, all that stuff as well. But no, I don't think they would have had a competition for him.
Andrew Owens asks, what are your thoughts on the idea that teams with bad quarterbacks shouldn't go for it on 4th down in the same way teams with good quarterbacks do? I disagree with that. The way I see it, if you don't trust your quarterback to convert, why would you trust him more to march down the field the next drive?
I do want to say one quick thing, Nick, before we get to that, on if there's any chance they won't cut him this offseason. I do think the way the Giants operate, there is a chance. Like, if he continues to have this efficient season with good EPA numbers and you know, like, he's operating the offense and some of these deep shots, they're going to have to hit, right? Like, it's not like he's going to miss wildly on every single deep throw he's attempted, which has essentially been what's happened this year. So those will start to hit and they could win games. And I could definitely see a scenario where they don't have any other option in their mind and they just bring him back.
Want to know what I'm looking forward to? When Daniel Jones hits his first deep shot for a touchdown, all the people on Twitter who are going to take a victory lap as if this means that he is now always going to do this. I am
not looking forward to that at all. I'm devastated by the fact that will happen.
It will happen too.
It will definitely happen. The bar is so low.
It's so low. It's so depressing that it's so low. We should have so much more respect for ourselves as fans.
We should
to demand a better product than what we've seen over the last decade.
But we don't. As far as the question, Andrew, it's a really interesting one. Because you're like, yeah, if he'll go for it, because if not, we get the ball back and he can't drive us back down the field. I think most coaches would probably argue that because I don't have trust in him, I don't have trust in him to execute the 4th down play. So I'm kind of turning the ball over. So I think I would probably lean toward that side of it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Nick?
I think these questions are a little loaded. Like, when it comes to 4th down conversions, that a lot of that is based on how much success you've had on the previous downs. What is the defense doing? Do you have plays to combat that specific defense? What do you think the defense is going to run? Is one of your players very hot? How has this game been going? Is it a field goal type of game? Is it a game where you're down a lot? So I just think there's a lot of factors that go into the decision to go for it on 4th down at your own 49-yard line or wherever the hell you are on the field. I like the question, Andrew, though. And I don't know how much of it always just falls on the quarterback. Again, it depends. With a player like Malik Neighbors on your roster, I guess it more so falls on your quarterback, right? Because those plays are probably going to be designed towards Malik or towards Wan'Dale Robinson. But yeah, I think it also just comes down to how aggressive the coach is too. And Daboll he's been a little bit more conservative than I think we would like. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah. So that factors into it as well. And I'm wondering if that conservative nature is a product of Daniel Jones. And if Brian Daboll had Josh Allen, would he be that conservative? And a lot tells me that no, he wouldn't be. So for your question, there's a lot that you can take away from that. Like, if Josh Allen was his quarterback, I think Brian Daboll would be more prone to going for it on 4th down in his, deep in his own territory, meaning like the 49.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, by the way. Ray Ronger asks, given how the season started, what would your plan be for Evan Neal the rest of the year? I think we've touched on this a little bit, Nick, but it would be to move him to right guard, give him a shot at right guard. I would say just give him a shot. Like, no offense to Greg Van Roten, but at some point I'd like to see Neal given an actual chance, because the problem with the idea of like him getting reps, quote unquote, at right guard in practice, quote unquote, there is no such thing. Like they practice with the starters, and that's once the season starts, you're kind of screwed from a rep standpoint. So it's risky too, because the offensive line, and honestly, I don't even know. Like the offensive line been playing all these games together, dude. I don't know if I even want to disrupt that, to be honest, at this point, and mess with the continuity and the chemistry, which sucks. But like, given the asset we spent on Evan Neal, it's a rough situation right now with this asset.
I think it's even deeper than that too when it comes to this asset, because the Giants view him as the swing tackle. So if something were to happen to Andrew Thomas or something were to happen to Jermaine Luminor, Evan Neal is going to step in there and be your swing tackle, which is a devastating thing, right? You have Josh Azudu as well. I just feel like the Giants have offensive linemen who are their backup offensive linemen ready to step in, who we have no faith in, because their development hasn't happened at all since they got in the league. Yeah. And they're both from the 2022 draft class. One of them was a top 10 pick. One of them is Evan Neal, and the other one is freaking Josh Azudu. They're on this goddamn roster, and they use them on the freaking left side, the right side. They use them interior. They try to use them in so many different ways. I think that put them in a position to fail, and they've never succeeded really throughout their entire NFL career so far, albeit short. So I would like to see them inside, but if something happens to either of those two tackles, is Evan Neal, are you comfortable enough to be like, all right, Evan Neal, I know you've been cross-training on the inside. Now you need to kick back out to right tackle where you've sucked your entire career. So there's a lot that goes into that. And a lot of it is just a lack of proven depth that the Giants have had. And hopefully this offensive line, I'm knocking on wood, Mary, they don't get injured, dude, because that could be a nightmare. It's the one positive that the Giant fans have. Oh, we kind of fixed the offensive line. Oh, that's nice. And then something happens, then you get Evan Neal back in there.
I know. All right. Ryan Correa asks, or Correa, I don't know. I would just like to know your early assessment of this quarterback class and what you'd like to see from a prospect to be on board with drafting them in the first round.
Yeah, I don't have anything on the quarterback class right now. What I'd like to see is all the things that you listed: arm talent, anticipation, leadership, processing, pre to post snap diagnosis, running an offense that isn't simple. Let me just look at the sidelines, always holding up a card. Okay, this is my play. I want a little bit more of a complex offense, something that they can, translate on Saturday to Sunday. So all of those things I'm looking for. And also some mobility too. I don't want a statue back there.
Yeah, I've seen, so for me, a lot of, look, I like to watch the tape on these quarterbacks to get the full grasp, just like Nick said, but I do also like to see their natural skill set, because I think from a translation standpoint, projectable traits are insanely important at the quarterback position. So I've watched some college football. I like Miller Moss's ability to anticipate. I worry a little bit about his size at the next level. Jalen Monroe is the one that interests me the most, intrigues me the most. Obviously, I watched Bama, Georgia, and I thought he was phenomenal in that game. I just see the skill set there. And I also see kind of how it might fit with a coach like Daboll and a system like Daboll. I've heard unreal things about his leadership. Kind of reminds me of like the Jalen Hurts situation there, but bigger and with more arm talent, I think, than Hurts. Maybe not as accurate as Hurts, but I think you can make that work. The thing for me, though, is, and I'm saying it now, Ryan, I've said it a bunch of times, I'll say it again. I don't care if they decide to draft a quarterback in this class and they have a bad year wins record-wise, I don't give a crap. If they have a chance to draft Arch or Nico in the next class, that's what I want, and that's what I'm going to stick to. Those are the real talents. They're not coming out. By the way, Arch might not even come out in 2026, which is devastating. He might be a 2027 prospect with Rayola and a couple of those guys. But Nico, from an arm talents, I want real. I want like the game-changing type arm talents. I don't, and size and traits. I don't want like to convince myself of somebody at the quarterback position. I've done that already with Jones. We've tried that for 6 years. A lot of teams are trying that. And some of those guys end up great when they're really quick with anticipation and they can do those things well. And you just kind of never know who those guys are going to be, because they're running college offenses and then they have to run a pro offense. So like the one thing you can confirm is this guy big? Does he rip a football into tight windows? And does he have the physical traits? That's the only thing you can confirm.
Henry White asks, the Giants seem stuck in purgatory. In what ways can Joe Schoen zig while the rest of the NFL zags to break the cycle?
It's a great question, Henry. I don't even know if I could tell you I have a good answer to this, to be completely honest. Do you, Nick?
So I think the entire NFL is currently zagging away from the zig that they've been under for quite a while. Like right now, a lot of defenses have adjusted to the explosive play. We saw huge numbers from quarterbacks, 2020, 2021. And what happened? All those defenses started playing too high shells, and we're starting to see more running the football. So that pendulum is starting to swing back towards a little bit more ground and pound, a little bit more physical up front. And you're seeing a lot of the explosive numbers come down from the previous years. So can the Giants lean into that? They haven't leaned into that, I would say. Now you built up your offensive line. That's kind of a universal thing. It doesn't necessarily go from one type of approach to another, because you just have a competent offensive line after having mediocrity all across your offensive line through previous years. So I'm trying to think of a specific way that the Giants can zig away from that. One is not coming to me. I would say you have to adjust. I think you have to find ways to be more effective and efficient running the football to take advantage of the fact that there are more too high. And if you see more too high, maybe incorporate some seam balls, maybe
Right.
incorporate your tight ends up the seam a little bit more. So Malik Neighbors doesn't have to see so much safety flowing over the top, but he's going to consistently see that as well. So Joe Shane specifically, how can he zig? I don't really have one. I think from an X's and O's standpoint, Brian Daboll, and a coaching standpoint, you can certainly zig away from the way defenses are playing you and make them pay. And a lot of teams are attempting to do that on the ground right now.
Right. I think you answer that perfectly. I don't really think the Giants have the run blocking like physicality or like the development to kind of be the run team for this year at least. But I like the idea of the seam ball, but I never see any other NFL quarterbacks really attempting it. So I think there's just something to that where
It gets your tight
it gets people killed.
Yeah, it definitely does.
That's a problem.
Rob Allen asks, how different is Deontay Banks' role this year than it was under Wink? Does this play to his strengths or his weaknesses? I would say under Wink, it's a more natural fit because he is a press man cornerback. I think he has natural press skills, excellent athletic ability to stick into somebody's hip pocket as a man covering defender. He doesn't run as much man right now, so he's playing from off, and I think that does work against Deontay Banks. So I think Deontay Banks is a bad player in Shane Bowen's scheme. Absolutely not. He could be an effective starter. He could be a player that you want on your roster, but I do think it's more natural for him to get up in a wide receiver space, maybe jam him and just stick to him and stay glued to him. And that was much more, that approach was much more evident and much more used in Wink Martindale's defense than it is in Shane Bowen's.
You nailed that one. We are running out of time, so I'm going to skip a few ahead that are repeat questions in some ways and get to one from Rob Allen, who asks, if Lock takes over, can he hit one of these big plays that we've had available to us each week? And is that more valuable than Jones's efficiency in the short game? We haven't heard Nubin's name. Also, we haven't heard Nubin's name called much. What have you guys seen from him on tape? Two good questions.
I'll tackle the Nubin part. Nubin's been fine. I think there's been times where he's taken poor angles and maybe wasn't in position, maybe missed an assignment here or there. That's to be expected. He missed some time in training camp. I think he's aggressive in run support. I think he comes up and sticks dudes next to the line of scrimmage from depth too, because these safeties play at a decent depth. So I've liked what I've seen from Tyler Nubin. I am intrigued, but he hasn't really made a huge play yet. And then in terms of Lock, I think Lock could hit on some of these throws. Lock has a much more lively and powerful arm than Daniel Jones. I don't know if Lock has the type of anticipatory skills that Dan and I advocate for. I don't know if Lock is as accurate with his deep pass. We don't really get to see it all that often. So I don't know if it would be more valuable, because I also think Jones is at the stone bottom of what we expect from him as a deep passer. I think he can improve from that. Right. But I'm also skeptical because I'm like, he might just be cooked from a deep passing standpoint for whatever reason. I'm unsure, but it does look bad right now. I think it's safe to say.
Great questions. I'll just from a time standpoint, I'll defer to your answer on Nubin. As far as the Lock thing goes, I don't know that it would be more valuable to Giants. I'll tell you why. If Lock is late on these short throws in this quick game and he's just not as accurate and just not working as seamless, there's going to be a lot fewer third down conversions. The Giants actually have a really good third down EPA. Jones done a good job finding solutions on third downs, and part of that is Daboll designing them, but it's a whole process, and I don't know if Lock can do it as. So I think the answer to this question is most of the modern day NFL, with teams playing the way they are on defense, is quick game, is passing game. So I would defer to the more valuable thing is the quarterback who can do that better for you than the deep shots. And I think that's exactly what the coaching staff has deferred to. Okay, Timmy K says, this is a great question. Because I just wanted to address this, and we haven't touched on this yet, Nick, because it's pissed me off, and I've seen it on Twitter. Lots of Giants fans scoff at the idea of trading Dexter Lawrence. And I get it. I'd hate to see him go. But is New York Giants going to reach a competitive level of play before his prime is over? I don't have faith in that, which is why I'm not opposed to a trade for the future of the team. Am I crazy?
There's no chance that I'm going to advocate trading Dexter Lawrence. He's our best asset. You need to get a haul for him. And I also don't think this roster is so bad right now that they can't turn this around if they just find the right quarterback and a couple things go their way, because they have talent here. So no, I am not interested in trading Dexter Lawrence.
Agreed. I'm not there at all. And I'll tell you why. The Giants are top 5 in fewest sacks allowed and most sacks as a defense. So they are winning in the trenches, and they have Malik Neighbors on this roster. And that alone tells me they're not as far from competing as they are, as people seem to think they are. I think a lot of it is they don't have a great quarterback on this roster, and some would argue not even a good quarterback on this roster. And so you get that, and things can change fast. So I would never consider trading a 26-year-old Dexter Lawrence, who is, in my opinion, the best defensive tackle, maybe the best player in the NFL. And in addition to that, I think it's always a grass is greener when it comes to these trades. Like trade Dex, maybe you get 1 first-round pick, a second, a third, blah, blah, blah. What happens? We take Evan Neal with that first-round pick. Now what? Right?
Exactly.
These first-round picks are not guarantees. They're good contracts. They're good assets from a contractual standpoint, but it's very hard in the NFL draft to hit blue chips. We've seen it with the Giants over the years of watching this franchise. We hit on a blue chip with Dex. He's only 26, so I wouldn't even consider it personally. Okay, James Carty asks, from a 30,000-foot view, are the Giants effed? We don't have a QB. None of the ones in the 2025 draft seem to be particularly exciting. They won't tank next year for a quarterback in 2026, and hindsight is 2020, but last April, it's clear as day they should have traded the farm for Drake May, even if he busted.
I don't know if it's clear as day.
Yeah.
I really don't. I mean, Malik Neighbors is a dude, bro. Like, Malik Neighbors is going to be a top 5 receiver in the National Football League for a very long time. Whoever's the quarterback is going to love the fact that they have Malik Neighbors. If the Giants do fire Daboll, or if the Giants need an offensive coordinator, Daboll wants to be a head coach again, there's going to be so many people who are going to want to come and work for Malik Neighbors, especially if they find a quarterback who they believe in as well. So work with Malik Neighbors, I should say. So I don't know if I agree with that last part. Dan, you want to tackle the rest?
Yeah, I would just tackle it in saying, I agree with you, but I also don't think, like, look, I love Drake May in this class. Nick liked him, and I think he liked him a lot, but not at my level. But I also recognize that he wasn't like this generational prospect that can't be missed on. And there might be some guys that have some of a similar skill set. And to be quite frank, like if Jaden Daniels keeps this up and stays healthy, he's the guy that even over Caleb, like honestly, and I still love Caleb, but like he's playing at a level right now that is absurd for a rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels. I mean, they're averaging so many points per game. They never punt the ball with him. He's so calm, cool, and collected on all these third down situations, and his EPA on third downs is amazing, and he just looks awesome out there. So
yeah, Jaden's a stud. I want to see him against a good defense. I don't think he hasn't played one yet, has he?
No, he has not played.
Arizona, the Bengals, us, and then who's the other one?
Tampa.
Tampa's solid.
He struggled against that.
Defense actually kind of sucks though. The defense isn't that great.
That good. Yeah,
it's really Baker who's carrying that team.
All right, unfortunately, we only have time for one more here, so we're going to do it here, and we're gonna. I couldn't scan through. We'll just go with Joe Frears here, and I apologize to those of you we didn't get to on this show. Next time we do a mailbag, we will feature your questions first. So I'll just keep in mind who that was. Knowing what you know now, how do you think this team would be through 4 games if they never traded for Burns and used that draft capital to instead sign a starting caliber quarterback? Draft, I guess, a starting caliber, or drafted a DB or offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in the second round. He said, I like the Burns trade at face value, but obviously he needs to produce.
I think the Giants are probably still in the same position they're in right now. They're 1-3, but they have a younger asset with probably more money on their cap because they wouldn't have allocated a huge contract like they did to this cornerback. But I'm not ready to give up on Brian Burns. This guy's still 25 years old, maybe 26 years old. He still, to me, has unique pass rushing skills that few in the NFL have. He's just not that dominant one. And I don't think he'll ever be that dominant one. We were hopeful that he could be. He's not Myles Garrett. He's not TJ Watt. Those guys are unicorns. He is an echelon, maybe 2 echelons below that, but still a better edge rusher than anything the Giants have had since JPP.
Yeah. He's dealt with a lot of chips this year too. Like you watch, and there's so many situations where he doesn't have like the free go to the quarterback.
Absolutely. And that's an offensive coaching point to focus on Brian Burns to do that. It's just when you're paying him that money, you want him to defeat that. He doesn't have that type of raw, explosive power. I think he's more powerful than he gets credit for. That raw, explosive power that Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and TJ Watt has, where it's like they hit you and like the guy gets put on ice skates and they're just going back. That's not Brian Burns. Brian Burns needs to win with a little bit more of a free release, uses agility, his finesse, run around you. That's where Brian Burns wins. He needs to have a lot of one-on-one matchups to win those. And then he's not going to win every single one of those because you're going up against solid offensive tackles around the league. I think the Giants, again, though, they get into some more positive game scripts. You're going to see Brian Burns actually thrive. He's just never really had that throughout his entire damn career because he played for the shitty Carolina Panthers and now he plays for the shitty New York Giants.
Yep, completely agree with you. That's all the time we have for today. Maybe I think of some other option we could have. Maybe we'll try to work into our preview podcast the rest of the questions at the end of that. That might be the best idea to do this. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please do us a favor and hit the like button, hit subscribe button. Help support this show, especially in a year like this one. We need your help. That's just point blank. We need your help. Thank you to everybody else who already does it, and have a great rest of your week. And we'll talk to you soon.